Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1, another Miami video, another Miami attire. Here I am for you, for all to see, for the reaction to the Miami sprint. And my God, I think that might be the best sprint ever, or at least the most chaotic. That is for sure. Make sure to like and subscribe before we get into all of this, but let's begin because the chaos starts before the race even begins, as there's a collision in the pit lane between Ocon and Leclerc, and it ends up with Esteban Ocon getting a 10-second time penalty in a race that won't start for another 13 minutes. And that set the tone for the rest of the session. In terms of the grid, Bottas has got a three-place grid penalty for the near collision with Oscar Piastri in sprint qualifying yesterday. So he was down. He should have been in 20th place, but he's in 19th because Alexander Albon is starting from the pit lane due to a suspension change. So that's all the changes on the grid there. On pole, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc is alongside. Everybody on the grid was on the mediums. Red Bull boys using used mediums rather than new mediums, as everyone else was. The start, Verstappen does get away well, but as does Leclerc as they go dueling into the start of the race, fighting for the lead. But further back is where all the eyes should be on, because there is quite the collision. It was involving Lando Norris, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and Lewis Hamilton. Norris is out immediately. This brings out a safety car. Lance Stroll is able to go round, but does retire the car. Alonso has a puncture. The only one who gets away with it is Lewis Hamilton. So basically what happened was Lewis Hamilton went for quite the dive bomb into turn one, and then Alonso was there and he couldn't move because he had Lance Stroll to his left. So Alonso gets completely sandwiched by Stroll and Hamilton, and then we have the domino effect of Hamilton hitting Alonso, hitting Stroll, then Stroll hits Norris and takes Norris out of the race. For some reason, stewards say no penalties for this whatsoever, and on one hand I can kind of understand it because, lap one, turn one, racing incidents, these kind of things happen. But both Stroll and Hamilton, I would say, weren't fully in control of their cars, and there's some penalties that get given out later in the race where I'd go, well, if you're going to give a penalty for that, you should give a penalty for this. But no penalty here, but Norris and Stroll are out of the race. Alonso is at the back. Whilst the safety car is out, Esteban Ocon pits and serves his 10-second time penalty. So a smart move from Ocon there to get that done. Safety car is going to come to an end on lap 4. Interesting though, Ricciardo had a good start as well. He started 4th, but able to get past Perez, so he's up in the top 3 at this point. Alonso has pitted for hards during the safety car, but as we restart the race, on lap 5, Perez is pretty much immediately able to get past Ricciardo to take that 3rd place back. And then Carlos Sainz is staring right at the back of Ricciardo's car, all over the back of him. But Perez, I'm not sure if this was on purpose or not, but was giving Ricciardo DRS. So Ricciardo was able to defend from Sainz pretty well. And then the biggest story of the race happens, because Lewis Hamilton comes along the back of Kevin Magnussen for P8. And my God, what a battle this was. Now, Kevin Magnussen, personally, I think is one of the best defensive drivers on the grid. And sometimes he goes a bit far. We saw this in Saudi Arabia, and we've seen it basically here again. Very similar things in terms of you have Nico Hülkenberg ahead of him, and he just knows if he can defend like mad here, he'll give a gap to Hülkenberg and Haas can secure some points. And that's basically what happens here as they are fighting all over the place. Haas seem to have the better straight line speed, but the Mercedes is better basically everywhere else. There is the first incident of many, which is that they were fighting and then just on the chicane before the last straight, Magnussen goes across the chicane. rather than going round, and he was reported for gaining an advantage. More on that in a little bit. Lando Norris is under investigation, by the way, for entering the track on foot. Now, I remember Hamilton did this in Qatar, and I think he got a fine. I don't think he got a penalty, so a fine could be coming Lando Norris' way, but I doubt he cares. Ricciardo is no longer getting DRS from Perez, which makes me think that Perez wasn't necessarily doing it on purpose, but despite this, he does still have a very good defence against Carlos Sainz. Now, back to the Lewis Hamilton, Kevin Magnussen debacle, because Magnussen and Lewis are fighting like mad. Hamilton goes around the outside of Magnussen and thinks he has the job done, but he does not, because Kevin Magnussen comes back and dive bombs him out of nowhere, gains the position back, goes a little wide going out of the corner, then as Hamilton goes around the outside of the next corner, Magnussen comes back across, they have contact, and Magnussen takes the position once again. At this point, the penalty comes through for Magnussen, a 10-second time penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. This is his first penalty of the day. Personally, I didn't necessarily agree with this one because we see it all the time. People skipping chicanes. And Hamilton was basically back to where he was the next corner. So I don't think that Magnussen really did gain an advantage here, because Hamilton was never going to pass him there anyway. We saw that lap after lap. So I think if Magnussen makes that corner, Magnussen doesn't make that corner, it really makes no difference, in my opinion. So for the many penalties Magnussen got, that wasn't one that I necessarily agreed with. On to the next lap, though, and they're fighting again into that corner, and they both go wide this time. Magnussen on the inside, and he's able to push Hamilton a little bit wide. They both go off the track, and as they're coming back on, through goes Yuki Tsunoda, but just on Lewis Hamilton. So it's now Magnussen, Tsunoda, Hamilton in this utter chaos. That was on lap 15. Now, we didn't actually see this. The greatest battle of the entire race. We didn't see the end of it, but at some point, both Yuki and Hamilton get past Magnussen. So I don't even know how that happened. But I imagine it was Magnussen giving up, not the other way around, because he was not being overtaken unless he wanted to himself. There's another 10-second time penalty for Magnussen for forcing another driver off the track, which I believed was fair, but it makes me think that if it wasn't Lewis Hamilton, say if it was Magnussen and Tsunoda, I don't think he would get that penalty. I think a lot of the time, the guys in the midfield and towards the back, they only get penalties if they're messing with the big boys, and he was messing with the big boy today. Alonso pits again for some reason. I don't know why, but he pitted on like the penultimate lap of the race, so there you go. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has won the race. We nearly missed that. We nearly missed him crossing the line because we were looking at something else. Leclerc comes home in second. Perez completes the top three. Ricciardo, a fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic for P4 for him there. Sainz was fifth, never able to get past Ricciardo. And there was no complaints from Sainz either. I think he gave her a thumbs up after the race. He just said, yeah, you were the better driver today. Piastri was in sixth. Hülkenberg was in seventh. So 2 good points there for Nico Hülkenberg. Lewis Hamilton comes home in 8th, but after the race gets a 20-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane in a race where he didn't pit, but they went through the pit lane under safety car. So speeding under safety car in the pit lane, 20-second time penalty. Lewis Hamilton goes from 8th to 16th. So Yuki Tsunoda finished 9th, but now is 8th and gets that 1 point, the final point of the sprint race. Kevin Magnussen was 10th. He also got another time penalty, a 5-second time penalty for track limits, and actually finished 17th. I saw, you know what, I'm just going to say it, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. It's wrong, and it was very aggressive, and he made some mistakes, but I think he did it all on purpose to make sure that Hülkenberg scored points. And afterwards, Crofty was like, oh, I don't know about the driving standards of that, but just like, yeah, but it was pretty fun to watch. I imagine if you're a die-hard Lewis Hamilton fan, you absolutely hate it. But if you're not a Lewis Hamilton fan, I imagine you were watching that going, that's fantastic to watch because it's just utter utter chaos. So there you go. Well done, Kevin Magnussen, driver of the day. Gasly was 11th. Fantastic result for him, all things considered. Sargent as well. 12th place for Sargent, so a good result for him as well. Zhou was in 13th. Russell, 14th. Another bad session for Russell. I don't really know what happened there. I don't think he was involved in the incident at the start. He just had no pace. So 14th place for George Russell, 15th for Albon, 16th for Bottas, 17th Ocon, and then Alonso was 18th place, even with the penalties for Hamilton and Magnussen. He's still 18th place because he did that weird pit stop at the end. Absolute chaos from start to finish, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Absolutely mental. Hopefully that sets a good thing going forward for the rest of the weekend. We'll be back here in a little bit for all things qualifying for the main race, which will be here later on this evening. So make sure you subscribe for that, and I will see you then. Until then, though, have a good one. Goodbye.